Welcome to a live edition of Inside Carolina's Noon Dish. I'm Tommy Ashley. That's Dylan Callahan. We're sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity HR. Don, already in the chat, Eric Miller, one of our regulars, bragging about his location and what he's eating for lunch. You know what I had? I had pimento cheese and chicken salad for lunch ahead of this show. And Eric Miller's in the chat talking about eating a ton of shrimp. I can't say I'm not. I'm a little jealous
Are
there,
you
Don.
are you a shrimp guy?
Love it. Love seafood. All of it.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
So I try to, just because fish are obviously healthier. I try to, but I'm not like. Yeah, I like shrimp. I do like shrimp, but shrimp's a little bit different. What's your favorite besides shrimp? What's your go-to?
We catch fish all the time. Fried whatever. Fried
Okay.
jack. Fried trout. Fried flounder. Even though the state of North Carolina doesn't let you keep them anymore. Anything fried fish-wise. You can bake some salmon. You can do all that kind of stuff. But any seafood I love. Oysters. Do you eat oysters?
I've had it one time and I wasn't a huge fan. So you like it?
Yep. Love them.
Okay. Interesting.
Steam them. Anyway, top 5 today. Get it out of the way. Top 5 is going to be, since we're talking about food, it's going to be ice cream flavors. We've probably done it before, but neither one of us could remember for sure. So we're going to do top 5 ice cream flavors. It is it's summer, and everybody's eating ice cream during the summer. And
yeah, that's what I figured.
Who you got for chat MVP from last week? And we're on a roll here. I think this is the third or fourth week in a row we've done a show.
Yeah. So I have Sy, S-Y. That's it. He was very active, and I think he actually even submitted a couple questions that we ended up using during the podcast. So congratulations, Sy. You are the chat MVP, and this podcast edition is dedicated to you. So hopefully he is in here. So far, it just seems like Eric Miller, and no Sean Crawley yet. He's usually opening the doors for us.
Yeah, if you're in here, shout it out where you're coming from on the live chat. Eric down at the coast in Harbor Island.
He's just enjoying life. That's why he's celebrating it.
I can't figure out why you're watching us, Eric. I mean, plenty of beach scenes to look at down there, but we appreciate you joining us. Also, I mentioned our sponsors earlier, Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity. They make it all happen. Don, it is a busy season in North Carolina football. A lot going on in Chapel Hill with the baseball team playing, but you've been around Chapel Hill, hunting around Chapel Hill, because it has been official visit, heavy laden weekends. Let's talk about last weekend's. Your overall thoughts on the weekend?
Yeah, I know people think I'm maybe just BSing, and I'm kind of repeating what I said last week, but I think it was another really good weekend from North Carolina. They had 11 total official visitors, 4 of which were uncommitted, and they were top targets. And there was a reason why North Carolina tried to get some of these top targets this past weekend, because they were going to have so many of their commits on campus, which obviously, and we've talked about this before, helps with their recruiting efforts. The 4, in case you haven't been following, the 4 were 4-star cornerback Onis Konanbanny, 4-star wide receiver Malik Clark. I think he's a mid 3-star wide receiver Evan Haynes, and 4-star, he's a top 120 prospect. He's an Ohio State commitment, London Merritt, also officially visit North Carolina this past weekend. So receivers, obviously a big position of need, or one of the positions that hasn't been completely settled, but UNC has a bunch of targets that's really looking at. And even though Haynes is not as highly ranked as the other three wide receivers that North Carolina is pursuing are 4-star guys, UNC really likes him. And it wouldn't surprise me if North Carolina, the plan is to take 2, but it really wouldn't surprise me if they end up somehow taking 3 and that Haynes is one of those 3.
Yeah, when you look at it, there's certainly the talent pool. It seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like, we talk about offensive and defensive line, it's a crapshoot a lot. and quarterback's really important as well. But it seems like there's always a ton of wide receivers out there. Is that just a position that everybody wants to play these days?
Yeah, I think there's a ton out there because it's obviously a position that is highlighted in 7-on-7, so people are able to work on their craft throughout, all year long. So it's a position that's being developed very heavily. And then also, North Carolina's offense is very receiver friendly, and so that attracts receivers. And then really, we talked about this a bunch. I believe that North Carolina's ace recruiter is Lonnie Galloway, so naturally he's going to put a lot of effort into pursuing receivers. If you really look at just through the past, well, I guess since Mack came back, and you look at who were North Carolina's top targets at each position and what their hit rate at those positions, wide receiver has got to be number one. And I can't think of it other than, I guess, the one that pops in my head is Noah Rogers was the only one that they missed, but their top target at receiver they've hit every single year. And even with Andre Green, that didn't, he didn't work out in North Carolina, but he was a guy that UNC battled Clemson and Georgia for. And, Lonnie Galloway was able to win that. Alex Taylor, and Jordan Shipp, Taylor, Clemson, a lot of people thought Clemson was the lead there. And I thought Clemson was the lead there at certain points. Jordan Shipp, Michigan, won national championship, and they were hot and heavy with Jordan, and signed his quarterback, but yet Lonnie Galloway was able to win that one out. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things, but really we got to kind of tip our hat to Lonnie Galloway.
When you look at wide receiver recruiting for North Carolina, you mentioned having your quarterback there, Bryce Baker, obviously a big deal. Drake May, Sam Howell. A lot of people are down on North Carolina's quarterbacks this year, and we'll see how that plays out. I mean, they're not Drake May or Sam Howell, so I get the angst a little bit. But does it matter? I guess my question is, for these receivers in high school, does it matter on scheme and what the offense is like, or does it matter more who the quarterback is? You see the questions here?
Yeah.
It's because, to your point, Carolina's had good high school wide receiver recruiting throughout the process. Now, granted, this is the first year without a Drake or a Sam, but how much does that play into it, scheme versus actual quarterback play?
I think scheme is number one because obviously you want to be in a system that's going to get you the ball, and you got to feel comfortable that the offense or that the system is going to attract a quarterback that can get you the ball. I mean, if you look throughout college football and even at the group of five level, there's a lot of mediocre quarterbacks who are putting up big numbers and are able to kind of showcase their wide receivers because of the system. So I think that's number one, but it definitely helps, and I think though, I remember, both I had Jordan Shipp and then also Kendra Harrison, who's a 2026 tight end, not a receiver. So I know I'm going off a little bit, but both of those guys said the same thing to me, was that, hey, we know Drake May is leaving, but North Carolina has always brought in a really good quarterback. And, we'll have to see what happens this year. But I'm really high on Bryce Baker, and a lot of other people are high on Bryce Baker, including Jordan Shipp, who's caught passes from Bryce Baker at different camps and everything like that. So, is North Carolina, even though they don't have that first round quarterback right now, there's still the thinking that they have built the reputation that they will attract one. And I mean, really, would it shock you if Max Johnson has an unbelievable season? He's a kid who's we forget just how much experience he has in the SEC against those defenses, and he's going to play ACC defenses.
It's going to be interesting.
What's your thoughts on the quarterback stuff?
I think a quarterback's job is to protect the football and get it in the hands of the people that can do things with it. Now, if you have a quarterback that's dynamic and can run it, Connor Harrell's obviously an electric runner. But a quarterback, for me, is make the throws, don't screw it up. And for Carolina's purposes, especially this year, get the ball in Marion Hampton's hands and get the ball in the outside into the playmaker's hands. It's really It's not as simple as it sounds,
Hmm.
obviously, but it's not extremely difficult. I just don't think you need an ultra elite quarterback to have a real good offense. And I don't think you having an ultra elite quarterback means you win a ton of games.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen that firsthand watching these teams over the last 4 or 5 years. But I think for Carolina's purposes, Max Johnson, Connor Harrell, Jacoby Criswell, if it comes to that, just get the ball into the hands of the people that can do things with it. And you mentioned Jordan Shipp, and you also mentioned Alex Taylor. I'm telling you people right now, Jordan Shipp's going to play and play a lot in the fall unless some injuries come up. That guy is good. And just get him the ball, Don, and let him cook. I think that's the key here, and I think that's why the scheme matters. Is that the way Carolina plays offense is that's what it's designed to do.
Can I throw another name out there for you too? And everyone knows I'm a huge believer in Jordan Shipp.
Yeah,
Another guy that I've always been a huge believer of, Chris Culver. I feel like he takes the next step this season.
I agree. I mean, he's got to do it, right?
Yes. Yes.
He's got. That's one thing Ship did, and maybe because we were focused on him a lot in the spring and watching the practices, and it still comes back to me saying that if a NFL top 3 pick chooses you to catch passes in his pro day, that tells me a lot about what I need to know.
Yeah.
I don't need to have my old eyes looking and say this guy can play. I'm looking at a guy who's banking his future on you making him look good in pro day, and Jordan Shipp was out there with those guys. And so Culliver, Shipp, I think J.J. Jones is primed for a good year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. I think him missing spring and as much as that maybe not a big deal, but I think some of those guys that were out this spring has allowed Shipp and others to push up. But I think as far as quarterback play, just get the ball where it's supposed to go, and
Yeah.
do it on time and do it on that, and then you'll be fine.
I mean,
And
you're walking into a great situation because, like you said, you have Hampton running back, and then I mean, I think the receiving group is just unreal.
yeah, and look, neither one of you, neither you nor me are going to ever walk out on a college football field, but I'm positive I could turn around and hand it to Omari and Hampton 30 times a game,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
offense would make plays. So that's where it is for
Yeah.
North Carolina. When you're looking at receivers and you're looking at all that, let's talk a little bit about London Merritt. And
Okay.
not necessarily him in particular, even though it's a big deal, but defensive line in general. Jason Staples is in the middle of the defensive line or defensive tackle scout reports. If you're watching this and you're not a premium member of Inside Carolina, it's another reason to get there. Jason and I will be talking on a podcast about that position as a whole. But this is a position, Don, that whether it's Mack Brown for years to come or somebody comes in at some point, Carolina's got to figure out this defensive line deal. London Merritt could be a big piece of that going down the road. Your thoughts on him and sort of the Ohio State aura that surrounds this
Yeah.
recruiting, I think.
His recruitment is actually super interesting because I think I think the family would absolutely love for London to play in Chapel Hill because of the fact that his grandfather lives there. His dad grew up rooting for North Carolina. His dad graduated from Chapel Hill High School. There's a reason why I mean UNC dropped the ball. Some prior coaches on the defensive staff dropped the ball during the fall. And for a national kid like this, but yet they were given North Carolina as a whole was given a second chance because of this, because of the connection, you know, and so, but yet you have Ohio State, and I mean, I think if we're looking at this objectively, there's no, I think everybody will be like, yeah, I mean, if your goal is to go as far as possible, Ohio State is definitely a place that can get you there. So it's so interesting with all of that, and it was interesting talking to his dad afterwards, and then also talking to London. We ran the story this morning, so check that out on just some of the things that they said. But I'll throw an idea out there that I think I did see on the message board, but I was kind of thinking about it before. I brought up Noah Rogers, right? who signed with Ohio State out of high school. And, NC State, I know we don't want to give them any props, but they recruited him very hard, made their campus feel very comfortable with the people they had on their roster and the relationships they had established during his high school recruitment. So, things don't go so well in Ohio State. I mean, he basically immediately just picked NC State. I don't believe he took any visits to any official visits during his transfer recruitment. So now let's take this to London Merritt. He could easily go. Ohio State is constantly bringing in top 100 prospects, especially at the defensive line with Larry Johnson there as their position coach. Could there be a scenario where he gets there and just kind of gets lost in the shuffle? Absolutely. And so, if he jumps in the portal, what's going to be one of the schools that he's definitely going to have his eye on?
Yeah, I think, and it was, as you were talking, I was thinking of the question to ask. That's why it's so important to, I don't want to say treat these kids right, but don't burn any bridges
Yes.
if they choose to go elsewhere because of this portal deal. I mean, to your
Yes.
point, Noah Rogers, he just says, okay, this is not working out, I'm going there. And folks don't want to hear it, but State, like you said, State did a good job. And, he chose a school different from his brother, which is interesting. But can't say I blame him there. But anyway, I digress. The importance of relationship building in recruiting and not dropping the ball like may have been done on the young men we're talking about. Can you overstate why why it just has to be, even if they go somewhere else? It's like, it's not you, Don, it's me. I'm going here. I'm going to do this somewhere else. But you still care and you still keep that relationship. Has it made it really harder? Do you think it's made it harder in recruiting?
I don't know if it's made it harder. I think it's made it, because I think, I think it kind of gives you a little bit more hope in the London Merritt situation, because obviously you're facing, to say it's uphill beating out Ohio State would be an understatement, but at least you can say, hey, look, if it doesn't work out now, then maybe it works out later on down the road. But to kind of go back to your point, I mean, the thing is what we have seen through the transfer portal is that prior relationships matter, and that because of the smaller window, I mean, a lot of these kids are making decisions within a 2-week span. Some almost immediately, some already have in their mind where they want to go. And so, and if you look at, we can just go down the list, and we won't do that because we have other things to talk about, of all the transfer portal guys North Carolina has signed, and you just look at the relationships that mattered in those situations. Howard Sampson, he was coached by Clements at North Texas, made that pretty easy, and so there's all of that kind of factors into these situations and puts you at a huge advantage in these very short recruitments.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look through all the transfer stuff. It's almost always some sort of previous relationship, and we can talk about tampering and all that kind of stuff. I get it, and it happens aplenty. But ultimately, it's all about the relationships, and there you go. And people in the chat are talking about another school that's had some success with guys that went elsewhere to start with. It doesn't matter, in the portal era. It matters where they end up and where they end up producing.
Yeah.
Talking with Don Callahan here on the Noon Dish. Don, where do we want to go here? Because
we got one more guy that we didn't talk about. Might as well talk about Onis Konanbanny.
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
Okay.
This is if my memory serves. Last week you told us, or you told everybody, this is a guy who loves the process.
Yeah.
And hypes up everybody. Just sort of speak to what you've learned about his visit in Chapel Hill this past weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I think just talking to all the people I talked to at North Carolina, and all the commits who also officially visited this past weekend, and then talking to Onis also, and then also talking to some of the other schools, contacts. I think Onis tells everybody what they want to hear. Now, that doesn't mean he's not going to end up in North Carolina. I just think that before we start being like, oh man, did you hear what he said? He said this, he said that. Just keep in mind, he's telling a lot of these schools the same sort of thing. And it's really going to be interesting because I do think, I don't know if impressionable. That's why I initially thought that he was impressionable, but I think it's more of he tells everybody what he wants to hear, and that ultimately, when it comes decision time, which he intends on announcing in August, it's going to be, unless something crazy happens, or I shouldn't say crazy, unless something else happens where it makes his path pretty obvious. I think it's going to be pretty interesting who he chooses. A lot of these decisions we go into and we have a good idea of at least one or two schools. Usually we have an idea on what the selection will be. That might not be the case with Onis. This might be a situation where North Carolina feels confident, Florida State feels confident, and LSU feels confident. I'm sorry, and Tennessee feels confident. But hell, I mean, LSU, he's officially visiting this weekend. It would not shock me if we see a bunch of tweets with him on FaceTime calls with I don't know, throw out an LSU DB that's in the NFL now, and showing all these photos and talking this and that, because that's, he just loves the process. He's a great kid to talk to, but I think North Carolina did a really good job, and I think North Carolina has definitely done all that you can expect. Leaning on the relationship with Jordan Shipp, who was his 7-on-7 teammate a year ago, and making sure Marshall Pritchard also took his official visit this past weekend. Marshall and Onis were teammates for a couple of seasons at Raven Gap High School or Raven Gap School, until Onis transferred to another private school in Columbia, South Carolina. So at the very least, North Carolina is in it. And if you talk to him and you tell him you're a UNC fan, he's going to make you believe that's his destination.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not knocking people, especially young men or young people that are in these situations. Is like, you don't want to be mean to the person you're talking to or blow off the person you're talking to. So I think it's also part of that, and I respect how they handle the stuff. I couldn't imagine being 17, 18, 19 years old, and you got all these people coming at you wanting comment. And that being said, let me ask you, have you ever talked to a person, and you don't have to call names, where you immediately interviewed them and were like, yeah, they're not getting this guy?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, what's usually the tell?
I guess if the comments are very, very generic, and you can say them about any school. If you're like, oh, the campus was great, the coaching staff showed a lot of love, I like their academics, they have a great football program. I mean, I think there's certain things, and this is what kind of gives you a little pause with Onis. I mean, he gives you very pause in a good way for North Carolina's chances. He gives you, like, the comments, and I'm not going to reveal them here, but they're in the story that we ran on Monday. But the comments about what his parents told him about North Carolina, I mean, that's very specific, and he talked about just, how he values people who have been recruiting him a long time, and North Carolina is one of the first schools to offer him and everything like that. So there was definitely some stuff you can lean on, and I think there are people who have bought into North Carolina being the selection. If he chooses North Carolina, they're like, I told you so. He said this. But there's people at Tennessee who are saying the same thing, and there's people at Florida State that are saying the same thing. The thing that really kind of scares me a little bit is that for North Carolina is that Tennessee gets the last official visit, and so he will head into the dead period, having seen Tennessee last.
Is it first or last? Most important.
I think last. I think last is your preference. The problem is now in this situation, he's going to take all his official visits, so we know what last is going to be. But when you're heading, and you've asked me this question a couple of times, but when you're heading into June, you aren't 100% sure what's going to be or who's going to be last. And what I mean by that is they might set up all 4 or 5 official visits and then make a decision, the second weekend. So obviously that was their last official visit, not the last one scheduled. So now with Onis, I think it was pretty obvious from the beginning. He was a guy who was like, I want to take 10 official visits. I mean, if there was 10 schools who wanted to kind of, I don't want to say waste their time, but just kind of to bring them in, like Utah brought him in. he would have taken a bunch of those sort of official visits, and good for him. I mean, I would do the same thing.
Oh yeah, we've talked about that 100 times. I'm going everywhere. If you want to
Yeah.
pay me or pay my way to come see your campus, by all means, I am out there. We will do it all. Don, anything left before I take a break? We come back and talk about the week ahead.
Yeah, Preston brought up Honey Badger. That's a good DB reference for LSU.
Yeah, I mean LSU's got a ton of guys in those skill positions like we talked
Yes.
about that any of these guys could talk to. Let me take a break. Talk about Johnny
Sure.
T-shirt. JohnnyT-shirt.com, sponsors of Inside Carolina. If you like Don Callahan's premium work on Inside Carolina message boards and on the site, then you're obviously a premium member of Inside Carolina. And you obviously, if you didn't know, get a 10% off of your Johnny T-shirt order, whether it's in person or online. Visit Johnny T-shirt online or on East Franklin Street. Get same great customer service either way you go. The same selection of gear. It's baseball. They're in the College World Series. They've got the great baseball jerseys there. It'll be football season before we know it. They've got T-shirts, whatever you need for your summer wear, some bucket hats to cover your head if you don't have great hair like Don. Or if you just want to look cool, get you a hat from Johnny T-shirt. And before we know it, it'll be sweatshirt season. So Johnny T-shirt, everything you possibly need online and in person. Check them out. They're always having sales, and you get that 10% off your order if you're a premium subscriber. National Guys Pay the Bills will come back. It's noon dish. All right, Don, it's not as big a week numbers-wise coming into this weekend ahead. I guess the 14th is official. No, is it the 14th and 15th weekend officially here in Chapel Hill? What should folks be paying attention to with this week, and how important is it for North Carolina?
Well, there's one question that was brought up, and this is not technically a weekend. I can't start. There was someone asking about Jabri Wilson Coleman, running back from Philadelphia. So he's officially visiting North Carolina starting Tuesday, and then he's leaving Thursday. And I haven't really talked to him a whole lot, so I don't know specifics. But this will be his first official visit. I'm going off memory here, but I believe this will be his first official visit. He's also taking one this weekend, and then has another one the following weekend. So it's interesting because, obviously the preference is to bring guys in on the weekend. You could do a little bit more. There'll be other guys. North Carolina's really big on having other guys on campus because it kind of helps with entertainment. You're going to have a lot more fun if you're with guys who you can kind of relate to, who are also recruits. That sort of thing. Yeah, I'm pulling up his. So he's going to, on Friday, he's leaving to go to Michigan State, and then he takes his official visit to Penn State that last weekend. He's from Philadelphia, having grown up in Philadelphia. That's big Penn State country, as far as high level college football. I mean, you have some Temple fans and all that. But when it comes to Power 5 or Power 4 schools, Penn State's definitely a school in Philadelphia. And the situation with Penn State that's interesting is that they have, I believe, at last check, and I haven't checked in a couple of weeks, so maybe things have changed. They have three running back commitments. And now one of them's from Arkansas, another one's from Alabama, and the thinking from those who are following this closely, and what, from my understanding, has basically been implied to Jabri, is that Penn State doesn't anticipate holding on to all of those running backs, and that if and when they lose any of those running backs, that a spot will open up for Jabri. And a lot of people who know his situation believe that Penn State will be his ultimate destination. So, but stranger things have happened in recruiting. So obviously for North Carolina, who's still in the market for a running back in this class and doesn't really have one who looks like they're definitely coming to North Carolina. Whereas we see that with other positions where you could be like, okay, yeah, I can see this guy here. I can see this guy here. We don't have that at the running back position. So obviously they're going to bring him in and hope that they could put themselves in a really good position with this Philadelphia running back.
So a midweek official visit for him, like you mentioned, doesn't have a bunch of other guys around, a bunch of high school recruits around, but he gets a solo treatment, I would assume. And gets to be front and center and doesn't get any sort of lost in the wash when there's a ton of different guys there. What's ahead this weekend, Don? I know it's not as busy, like I said, not as busy a week,
Yeah, so we
but yet another
have
one.
4 guys this weekend. Edge rusher Tayshawn Austin, in-state guy. Michael Matthews, a 4-star wide receiver. Another 4-star wide receiver in Snook Shamarius Peterkin, another in-state guy. Michael Matthews is from Virginia, by the way. And then Georgia running back commit Bo Walker. And kind of talk about the same thing. There was some hope early on that Georgia, so he's been committed to Georgia since October. At that time, Dale McGee was Georgia's running back coach. Well, he has since left Georgia to become, I believe, it's Georgia State's head coach. And obviously, you bring in a new position coach. They value different things. And initially, there was some thought that he wanted some other guys over Bo Walker, but they have whiffed on some of those guys. There's a Bo Jackson, believe it or not, in Ohio, who they were recruiting pretty heavily, brought him in for an official visit, but then he ended up committing to Ohio State. There's another running back that they're pursuing in Georgia, and it looks like they'll probably get him. But other than that, it's just that running back and Bo Walker, which is not a really good situation for UNC. So, but you never know. As I said, stranger things have happened, and he's kind of in the mix for that running back spot for this class for North Carolina.
Yeah, so be on the lookout for all of Don's reporting from that weekend ahead. Can I ask you about a camp? Can I ask you
Sure.
about quarterback camp?
Sure.
Tell me a little bit about the quarterback camp and why it's important and what it's designed to do, not only for the player, but for the coaching staff.
Yeah, so we know the quarterback position is a very different position, and there's obviously a lot that you can gain from bringing a quarterback in and having him throw. That huge amount, way more than you can get from watching film, although film is definitely important, but there's certain, the velocity, having him throw certain throws that maybe his high school doesn't throw. You can tell a lot about a quarterback, and then put him in situations to make him uncomfortable to see. But what a traditional camp might not do is work on or evaluate the preparation or the basic knowledge of offenses and schemes and just overall quarterback play. And so what the quarterback academy does do in addition to regular camp stuff is it has, I believe there were 2 like instructional periods where they're kind of in the classroom. And obviously for obvious reasons, I wasn't present for any of those because, that would, that's in a building. So it's a little bit different situation when it comes to NCAA rules, but I imagine there's some quizzing going on. There's some putting guys up on the chalkboard to see what they do sort of situation. So where you're able to kind of evaluate recruits from, the mental side, because preparation is huge. You remember when Sam Howell was, and even Drake May also was at North Carolina. Phil Longo would talk about just how much time they would spend together in the office going over plays and that sort of thing. And how, I can remember Longo talking all the time about how Sam Howell would be the first one in, first one out sort of thing. So those aspects certainly matter, and you just can't really evaluate those by just having, a 2-hour camp session only. And so from the coaching standpoint, this coach academy situation allows you to kind of evaluate a little bit more.
Yeah, so a little deeper than, to your point, just show up on a camp day and there's 500 kids out there and you're running whatever. So that was this past week as well. Don's got some scoop up on that, some interesting names. Don, what else is on, we talked about it a lot. June is commitment month too.
Yeah.
And these colleges want their commits coming in. We've talked about the potential of having really early signing days and all that kind of stuff. But how important for North Carolina, for Mack Brown in this offseason, whatever we want to call offseason, to get the class loaded up before August? I mean, I know they'd like to do it, but is it possible?
Yeah, well, other than the one spot at D-line last year, they basically did it last year. I think it's becoming just the norm. And we had Pat Suttis on here. What was it? A couple weeks ago, and he mentioned the I guess would be like late June, early July signing period, and just talking to people, it seems like that's going to be more and more likely. And they probably will do is basically have people take their or recruits take their official visits in June, make a decision, and sign in July or the end of June or whatever it may be, and then completely make July and August completely dead for recruiting. Which right now, and I probably should have mentioned this when I was talking about Onis Konanbanny, that last week of July is actually open, not for official visits, but for any other visits, unofficial visits. There and even some camps. And so, if Onis actually does stick to his August decision, it's going to be interesting to see if somebody tries to bring him and someone successfully is able to attract him to their campus during that week. That could be an opportunity for North Carolina to kind of combat that Tennessee getting that last official visit by maybe getting the last unofficial visit prior to him actually making his decision. But anyway, but going forward, there's a very real possibility that that week is no longer an open period and it will be a dead period. And so everybody's basically, I wouldn't say everybody, I think Power 4 schools are going to look to have the majority of their class signed by July if this rule goes in place. And then you're using the fall just to kind of tie up loose ends. So maybe, you still could see situations like North Carolina was in last year where they were still kind of looking for a defensive lineman. But in all honesty, I mean, the mentality, even with North Carolina, who still wants to rely heavily on high school recruiting, they're still, they're coming to the conclusion of, hey, let's say we want, 2 DBs, but we don't get them. Maybe we save those spots for the transfer portal because there's an awful lot of DBs in the transfer portal the last couple of years.
What is the point of the dead periods from both sides of the fence?
It basically protects the college coaches from themselves. Because if it wasn't dead, then college coaches would be having a ton of visits during those periods. And so, they are not able to kind of regulate themselves because we have some nutso coaches who are going to they get to the office at 5 a.m., they leave at 3 a.m., and they would do this every single day if they were allowed to, all, 365 days a year sort of thing. But we know human beings need to recharge their batteries. They need vacation. They need to spend time with their families. And in order to do that, they have to have those dead periods in there so that coaches can kind of just focus on those things. Because, it would put you at a disadvantage, a significant disadvantage, if you say, hey, let's say July and August were open and you were saying, hey, we're not going to have any visitors. We're just going to go on vacation. Well, it puts you at a huge disadvantage against your competition if they are still hosting visitors. You look at a situation like Onis Konanbanny. I mean, if you're able to bring him on campus a couple of times prior to his announcement, and but your competition is taking a break, that's going to hurt them. So this is more for the college coaches to protect them from themselves, which is a lot of these rules, all these rules they complain about. I shouldn't say all of them. A good chunk of the rules that they complain about with the NCAA are rules that that were passed by a committee of athletic directors or chancellors or presidents at these colleges, and they're done to protect their coaches from themselves. All those rules they complain about.
Interesting. Yeah, because you'd see a lot of guys, and this is not Carolina specific at all, but you'd see a lot of guys dead in the office.
Yeah.
If they never were, never were told or had to. Now, I'm not saying everybody follows the rules, but at least the rules are there to sort of, to your point, protect and give people a break. How much do the dead periods affect the kids? And I say kids, the young men that are being recruited.
I think it's. I mean, obviously, it's a lot easier for a kid to say, "We're not going anywhere this month." You know what I mean? But I think it takes the pressure off because they are, not just them, but their high school coaches and their parents are being pressured to bring these kids in on visits and that sort of thing. And so I think it gives them a good little break. And that's what it's about. And some people might say, well, the kids should be able to do what they want. And yeah, I agree, but I think we need some sort of balance in this. And being a college football coach, it's an absolute grind, because of just the nature of the beast. So
Recruiting is crazy. The transfer portal and the unlimited transfers and immediate eligibility has just changed everything. You mentioned Pat Suddas. We've talked to Alex White, Alex Mars, and all those folks. It never ever stops
yeah,
for them, and that's why I asked about the dead period. Sort of, Eric Miller in the chat said dead period equals ceasefire, basically. But even with the ceasefire, people are still doing things and still getting that done. Don, anything left before I get to ice cream?
well, there was a couple questions in here. I saw one early on. Let's see. I wish I could star these. We got to figure out a way so I could star these for you. Well, no, I'm sorry. Tyler Woods asked about Jabri Coleman. We covered that.
Yep.
I felt like I saw something else too.
Somebody asked about Christensen involved in the camp.
Yes, so he was definitely involved. So just to kind of, I guess, paint the environment there, Mack Brown and Pat Suddas and the rest of, I guess you would call them the personnel staff, they were all there observing just like any other camp. And then you had a couple of the position coaches making cameos, like Lonnie Galloway came down at one point. And then also I did see, I feel like I saw Coach Clem down there too. But as far as actually coaching it up, Chip Lindsey's heavily involved. Now he does more of kind of like a rotational sort of thing, going around seeing all the different groups, because there's a good chunk of kids there. There really are. I mean, there was, I hate to kind of throw a number out there, but I feel like there was about 100 kids there. And so he's leading the charge with a lot of it. But a lot of the actual coaching is being done. Clyde was doing a lot of it. Some of the offensive grad assistants were helping out, and then the actual coaches were doing. Max was heavily involved with it. So was Connor was heavily involved, and I even saw Chriswell out there also kind of helping. So it's kind of a group effort from those positions, from the quarterback position.
Yeah, it is it's definitely like you said, a group effort from everybody across the board here, and you want the players as much as possible involved as well. Let me give a shout out to somebody on the message board. It was a first-time listener. I want to do that before I miss it. Pitbull 90 in Alabama, first time ever watching live.
Great.
So shout out to Pitbull 90 in here. Might get a default chat MVP, but it looks like we've got a few. I've got 4 ice cream flavor things.
Okay.
It is summertime. Summertime, folks. Get your ice cream flavors in. Let's go. Eric Miller, since you've been front and center, cookies and cream, chocolate chip, dark chocolate, vanilla bean, caramel ice cream? What brand? Preston. Strawberry, banana, blueberry, vanilla homemade is the best, however. Nothing like packing the ice and the rock salt around the old steel drum and letting it spin and getting you some homemade ice cream. Love it. Stephen Blakely, black cherry, strawberry, butter pecan, peach, and vanilla. Tyler Woods, strawberry cheesecake from Ben & Jerry's, half-baked from Ben & Jerry's, butter pecan. Do you say pecan or pecan?
Well, it's tough when somebody already has said it, because then I feel like a default to that. But I feel like I would say pecan.
Pecan. Okay.
I think.
I can go both ways, but pecan.
Yeah, it depends on if someone says pecan, I'm going to probably say pecan back, I think.
Okay. Is caramel or caramel?
That's another one like that. So I think I say caramel, I think.
Man, Tyler Woods finishes out with Rocky Road and Moose Tracks. I like anything like that as well.
Now, is Rocky Road, Moose Tracks, are they the same or are they different?
I think they're different because at least the Moose Tracks I've had, Rocky Road has more of the nut
Okay.
chocolate covered nuts, and I think, and I could be wrong, but Moose Tracks has more like the brownie chunk type
All right.
stuff.
Well, I'll go with that then.
You go with what you like. What's
Yeah,
your top five?
Tyler, give us a description because I'm curious. 'Cause sometimes I just yeah. Anyway, you want to give yours or you want me to give mine?
Well, I'll go anything chocolate. I love
Okay.
some chocolate. I love Rocky Road. I love Moose Tracks. It doesn't matter what name brand. I love coffee. Coffee, I think
Do
is a
you
Ben and
really?
Jerry's. I love coffee ice
That's
cream.
probably the only one I don't like. But go ahead.
Really. I am straight. I'm straight chocolate person.
Okay.
And the only real not I'll like some peach, some homemade peach. My mom's God bless her, she's gone, and we can't repeat the recipe we've tried over and over. Her homemade peppermint ice cream was
Okay.
always a staple on July 4th, especially. Been trying for years to recreate that, get close. It's just impossible. And so, yeah, I'm a chocolate, a coffee, a nuts, or whatever in it, peach and peppermint. That's it. I'm not a butter pecan person. I'm not all those strawberry and all that stuff. Simple man. Chocolate, coffee, peppermint. Can't beat it.
All right. Mine, my two go-tos: chocolate chip cookie dough, love it, and peanut butter cup. The more creative, because sometimes you can get peanut butter cup and they throw like the little like slivers of peanut butter in there. Love that. Also like some strawberry. Love Rocky Road and Moose Tracks. I do think that they're different. Did Tyler? Okay, here he goes.
Yeah, he
Moose
kind of
Tracks has
updated
the
it.
chocolate covered caramel stuff. Okay. Rocky Road is more nuts.
And
Gotcha. All right.
Ron Odell's giving us grief in the chat, buddy. We've been talking football for 45 minutes. We can talk ice cream for a couple of minutes
Yeah,
in the
come on,
chat.
Ron.
I mean,
Ron,
it's like what are
when
we
you get in
doing,
here,
man?
Ron?
I know, really. You know, feel free to catch us next time as we talk noon dish recruiting. We'll be back. Did we decide next week, Don? Are we doing Tuesday at noon
We
next
are
week?
going to let's see what we can do. Maybe we'll go back to Wednesday.
We shall see. I am at Don Callahan's mercy. So, and folks, remember this: have fun, stay safe, and remember what the older folks told you. If you got nothing to say, nice, don't say anything at all, and join us next week. Oh, James Pittman sliding in under the.
Uh-oh, what is it?
Hey, we're violating the rules here. Strawberry, blueberry cheesecake, caramel, vanilla bean, double chocolate. I do like Breyer's vanilla.
Yeah.
Anyway, Don, it's been a pleasure. How's the baby?
Baby's great.
Baby's great. He's 6'4", 305 already.
Something like that. He feels like it because with all the eating he does. But yeah, so I'm about to right after this. I had baby duty. My baby duty stopped about 5 o'clock. I did a walk at 5 o'clock. Him and I did a walk, and then I had to do some work stuff, and I'm about to get on baby duty for a little bit while I do a little bit more work stuff. So yeah,
Well,
it's good.
handle it. I'll get this posted on the audio feeds if you want to check it out there, but check out Don Callahan's work at Inside Carolina. Shout out Congruity, congruityhr.com/Tar Heels. Get your free small to mid-sized business assessment there. They can help you. They're locally owned and a local business here in North Carolina that has made it big. So support them and get everything you need for your small business with them. They handle all the hard stuff while you handle growing the business, and they are worth the time and effort to go check out that website, congruityhr.com/Tar Heels for your assessment and also Johnny T-shirt. Don, it's a pleasure.
It's always fun, Tommy.